Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Steve Page, and I welcome you to yet another in the fantastic round of webinars that have been running in today's Startup Day. What I'll be doing is focusing in on bringing new products to market. My background is in the aerospace industry, and I spent a lot of my working time developing new concepts and new ideas and bringing them to market. Since leaving aerospace and running my own business, I've helped well in excess of 1,000 businesses in order to follow that journey. So I'll be sharing with you some of those experiences today. What I want to touch on really is 4 sort of key areas. I'd like to sort of help you step back and just have a fundamental look at that overall journey, what we call the innovation journey, that goes from idea right the way through to market launch. In particular, what I'm going to be doing is focusing in on sort of some of the more risky and more expensive parts of that innovation journey, because they're the bits where, if you've not been through it before, are the ones that are likely to catch you out. So I'll focus in on that in terms of how and when to make prototypes and what we're looking to gain out from the prototypes that we build and test. And also touch on a really key important aspect of this whole program, which is the money side of things, because the innovation journey from idea through to market launch is an investment phase, and it's key that we're able to raise the funding and the finance that we need in order to be able to complete that journey in a short and effective time. So I'm going to be touching on these particular topics for you by way of just giving you that sort of insight into the sort of things that you might expect when you are sort of taking that idea and wanting to drive it through to a product launch. So let's just take a step back and have a little look at what we're talking about in terms of that overall process that you would follow. I can sort of show it in this diagram reasonably well. What you see there on the left-hand side with the big circle around it is that investment phase that we're going to be looking at. So it starts off with an idea, and the monies that we would then invest in doing that take us into a net debt, which is shown as the red line goes down. So the vertical line we're looking at is money. Above the horizontal line is money in your pocket, and below the horizontal line is money that you would be accruing. It would be money that you would borrow and would invest into the program. The blue line represents when you start to get a return on that investment. So it's the business that is taking your particular product that you launch into the marketplace and making money out of the back of it. And what we're looking for is a nice ratio where we've got many times more amount returned in sales than we have invested. And it's a key part of understanding whether or not we are backing the right idea, and that we don't end up taking an idea to market with all of the trials, tribulations, and investment that is needed, only to find that our blue line is a relatively small, low thing that doesn't really give us a proper return on all the hard work and effort we put in. So we're looking at this whole business launch phase, or this whole experience, as a 2-part journey. The part shown in red, which is what we're going to focus on primarily in this webinar, is that investment phase, the idea through to product launch. And the blue element is the exploitation of that product through a business into the market, where you're able to get a really good, excellent return on investment. So I'm going to drill down now and just have a closer look at this investment phase, this idea to market launch bit, and touch on that because it can be done in a relatively unstructured way, and that can cause all sorts of problems and difficulties that will manifest themselves later on, either in terms of a poor a business launch or in terms of the investment phase being much bigger and more expensive than you might want it to be. So, having a closer look at that red line, what I'm going to do now is just break it up into a series of stages and just quickly highlight what each stage is and talk to you about the structure that you might follow when going down this particular journey. So the first stage, stage one, is what I call idea generation. So this is where you are coming up with ideas, and there might be a variety of techniques that you're using in terms of doing that, or it might be that you've just had a eureka moment and that you have identified a particular problem and come up with an idea in terms of how to resolve it. So it all starts with an idea. Often that doesn't cost you a great deal. So in terms of this particular graph, where we're looking at the horizontal line being time as it moves on, and the vertical line being the finances. So above the horizontal line, we're in the black, we're making money. Below it, we are borrowing and investing money. So we're building up a debt against the project as we go through each of the stages. And it's really important to understand what the stages are, work out what's involved in each of them, and be able to put some sort of estimates to it so we can see just what sort of investment we might need to find to complete that journey. So, stage one, idea generation. You may already have got that stage, or you might still be looking for an idea in terms of moving forward. The second stage is what I call definition, but it's really a scoping exercise. So what we're doing here is just taking an initial look at the idea that you've got to see whether or not we can find some sort of information out around it. Is this something that is quite radical and revolutionary and nobody's ever thought of it before? Or have other people done it, but you can just sort of see a better way of doing it? So there might be a number of different ways that this problem could be solved. And really what we're wanting to do is filter out the one that you think is going to be the best way forward. So we're having a little look here, doing a little bit of research. Has anybody done something like this before? Are there any patents on it? Would you be infringing them? Or have they long expired? Have there been any research papers published on it which has sort of shown that the concept doesn't work and explains why? All really key important things that we need to understand before we launch on this journey. And unfortunately, in my experience, many sort of new startups, people who haven't walked this journey before, often grab an idea and move straight into trying to build a prototype and test it. And never even stop to think that they ought to do some research around it. And that comes to cause problems later on. So really important, we take that discipline out. And there may be some fees associated with patent searching, with access or buying certain publications that we might need to do that initial scoping. And out from it, we should be able to filter out those particular solutions that we really aren't that fussed about. They're not going to be the ones that we're interested in, or you are confirming that nobody's come up with this idea before and that you've got some clear space in order to be able to progress it. So I've sort of notionally, and depending upon what you're doing, sort of put a few £100 down there as a cost that you might allocate in a budget to undertake that sort of activity. Moving on then to the second stage. The second stage now really is that you've had that initial scope. You've, the third stage, you've had that initial scope in the second stage, and you're now really focused on a particular solution or two that you want to really go into some detail around. So this is a real sort of research focus, and there are two areas that you're looking at. One is the marketplace, because if we're going to get that blue line that we showed on that first graph really, really going up high, we need to be absolutely certain that there's a good, strong market for that. Loads of people who will be potentially willing to pay their good money to buy the solution or the product that you're looking to sell. So there's quite a bit of market research. We need to understand that there's a proper market there. And if you're going to raise money to support this particular investment phase, the idea is to marketplace, then having a strong understanding of the market and getting some sort of outline business plan with some market indication would be a really good thing to do at this point. Secondly, we're also really wanting to do some market around the technologies, the idea itself, so that we can get a really good feel for what's already been done, so we're not repeating stuff, and therefore where we would focus our development effort. There's a bit more work involved in this, quite a few more hours. You might need a little bit more help. So I've sort of notionally allocated sort of £2,000 to £3,000, £2,500 worth of budget that you might need to support you through this phase. If you're going to do a lot of that work yourself, then that figure will be a whole lot smaller. And also, if you're just looking at something which is more product development, where you are refining something that already exists, then you must probably not be incurring anywhere near these sorts of fees. This is more for something which is quite new and therefore would require that greater effort to be done around it. So as we progress our way down this investment curve, and we move into the fourth stage, this is the bit where it really starts to get expensive. So once we have satisfied ourselves from the research that we've done in stages 2 and 3, that we've got something that's a real goer, because if we've identified something that we haven't, we don't really want to be moving further forward with this. We need to go away and rethink our idea and come back with something even better. So moving into the fourth stage, this is where things get really expensive. This is where you're now having to commit to building prototypes and all of the challenges associated with that, as well as doing all of the testing and the further development work, because as you test your various prototypes, you may very well find that they don't work quite as well as you wanted, or they work better in some circumstances and not in others. And you've got quite a bit of redesign and redevelopment and going back over and making that solution even better from what you've learned from the testing that you've done on your prototypes. And you can see how the sort of scale of costs now has really jumped up. So we've jumped from sort of like 2,000 or 3,000 to sort of 35,000, 40,000 potentially. Just an indication of the sort of step change that we can see. So if you have gone into this stage now and you haven't done stages 2 and 3, so that fundamental research, that understanding the market, that's making sure that what you're doing is going to be a clear path for you and hasn't already been done, or there's all sorts of problems with it, or the technology that you need in order to make it work is problematic and is still a few years off. You're going to be spending an awful lot of time and money on something that isn't going to get to market particularly quickly. So the little yellow sort of dotted lines we've got there are sort of gateways, the safety checks along the journey to make sure that you're clear to go to the next stage, should you need to do so. Also, with the sort of money that these particular stages can require, you can see how getting access to funding is absolutely key in order to be able to keep your journey on track. And we'll touch on that briefly at the end. So the final stage in this is the stage of demonstration, commercialization, I call it. So we've got all our prototypes built, we've done all of the testing, we've satisfied ourselves that this thing will do what we want it to do and all the technology is working properly. What we can now do is get ourselves ready for that market launch. So there's quite a bit of preparing the market, there's all of the building the final demonstration side of things, there's meeting all of the rules and regulations and safety requirements and the likes. Gaining independent validations and tests, a series of promotional packages that you might want to put together so that you're ready to go when you kick the thing off. So this final stage, which can often be the biggest and most comprehensive and hence the most expensive, tends to come right towards the end. So again, you can see for a relatively modest program, you can be looking at somewhere in the order of £100,000 worth of investment that might be needed over the space of a year in order to take that idea right the way through to market. And as you're going on that journey, you need to be looking at how you can raise the finance to pay for the next stage. And you really need to know or have a good estimate for how much things are going to cost and the timescales associated with them. So you've got a really good, clear investment and innovation plan that you are following and tracking. It will serve you really well. So that's what we're trying to achieve. All this hard effort on that red investment curve is all about trying to create a really good return on investment, where we're exploiting that innovation through a business by selling those products into the market. And hopefully we can be looking at 10, 15, 20, if not more, times the value earned through sales than we have invested in the first place. So that market analysis and market research really is key to understanding whether the idea is one that's worth taking on this journey or parking and going off and finding another one, rather than getting part way through and then struggling to raise the finance and remortgaging your house and a whole load of other things in order to pay for it, only to find that the market wasn't there or somebody else has already done it, or you're still 2 or 3 years before the technology is matured enough in order to be able to do it. So think long and hard before you dive in and really follow those stages, because they can be so powerful in terms of guiding you step by step along that route. So stage 4, development. This is where we're building the prototypes. This is where it really starts to get expensive. So if you've done the first 3 stages and you're not quite sure whether this is something that's worth going, then you need to think long and hard about it, because when you get into development, things are going to get really expensive. So the key really is to try to plot and plan your way through this and to try to find some ways in which you can get what you want done at the minimum cost. And there are some ideas that I'll just sort of explore with you that hopefully might help you here. So the best way I think to try and sort of explain it is by sort of looking at an example that gives us an indication as to sort of what's going on. And some of the market research or some of the research that you've done in those earlier stages should really start to come into play. And in fact, if you haven't done that in those early stages, you're going to struggle at this point in terms of being able to really know how to go about organizing yourself in a way that's going to be effective, but streamline and reduce those costs down as low as you possibly can. So I'm going to take an example here of a massive, multi-billion-pound global marketplace, which is associated with do-it-yourself tools, and just focus on the hand drill, just to sort of try and give us a little bit of a feel for some of the questions that we might need to be asking in the earlier research, but also now in terms of the prototypes that we might need to be building. So if we've come up with an idea for a new way in which we can safely drill holes that will be superior to the current products that are in the marketplace, then we need to be sort of having a little think about that. So if we were to just take a step back and in our research have a little look at the evolution of a hand drill, then we would discover and could draw up a picture something along the lines of this. Now, I've only gone back so far, but if we take the cordless drill, which sort of sits in the middle of this particular chart, as being where we are now, and we look out to the right-hand side, then what we can see are new product cycles that will come along at some time in the future, with products that supersede or replace the current handheld battery drills that we use today. And you can see that by way of an example, if we sort of go back 100 years to the start of this journey with a device called a brace. So a little picture there in terms of what it was. It's a mechanical device that you put a drill bit in, a cutter in, and you hold the top and you rotate the thing round as a swivel on it, and that mechanically rotates the cutter. And it was slow, but it was effective, and it would cut through wood. So every joiner who wanted to make holes in wood would be using a brace in order to be able to do that. It was the state-of-the-art tool for making holes in wood at that time, and was around for hundreds of years before it actually got superseded. Somebody came along and said, look, I'm wanting to have a drill that will, hand drill that will cut through harder materials, and the brace just won't do it. And they did some research and found that the faster the cutter speed goes round, the harder the materials you can drill through. So they went off and they designed a gear wheel into a brace, and they came up with a little device like that. You may actually have one at home, called a geared drill. And the gearing on it enabled the drill bit to rotate 6 times faster when you rotated it than the brace was able to. And suddenly we could start to drill into other harder materials. Black & Decker came along then with an idea which said, actually, we want to be able to drill it faster. Our arms ache when we're doing too much of this. And they put an electric motor into the device and connected it up to the mains. And we ended up with the electric corded drill. And that was an amazing piece of kit that, again, totally superseded the mechanical versions that came before it. As health and safety rules and regulations have come along, and trip hazards in construction sites and the likes have come into play, what we've seen is having all of these power cables and sockets and the likes all over became a greater health and safety risk. And therefore, the needs for the device started to change, and inventors got their heads around looking at ways that they could power these things without having to connect them to the mains. As a result of that, with battery technology coming online, we've now got these lightweight battery packs that will drive the drill. So you can see how the evolution of this particular product has, over the last sort of couple of 100 years, evolved from a simple brace into the power drill with the battery packs that we have now. And there are all sorts of little refinements that are going on with each product during its sort of life cycle. So, for example, the Black & Decker corded drill, when they first came out, had a lightweight aluminium casing until a few people found that in the rain they were getting electrocuted. So they had to replace that metal casing with a polycarbonate lightweight plastic one. And then they put in variable speeds, rotate one direction, rotate another. There's hammer action. There's all sorts of extra inventions that have come along within that particular class of product. So we've got the incremental, but we've got these highly disruptive steps as well, where a new product comes in and basically supersedes all of the previous ones that have come before it. Now, with a multi-billion-pound global market, the race is going to be on to identify what that next product is. And depending upon what your ideas and solutions are, would determine which particular challenge that you'd have and the sort of prototypes that you might need in order to be able to develop it. So if you've got an idea for this and you can get this to market quickly, you're going to be making an awful lot of money. And again, it just brings the point around that sometimes you can have a fantastic idea, but if the market is really, really small and is quite entrenched and people aren't going to be particularly willing to swap their old product that they know very well with something which is sort of relatively simple or quite new and untested, it can be a really, really difficult thing in order to be able to break in. So that whole market assessment with your idea and the brutal truths that come with it are really quite important. So what is the next big invention around here? What is going to be that new product for the future? The market research that you may or has been done around this tracks that evolution and is particularly looking at things like, well, what technologies came along that enabled that to then take place. We couldn't move to the cordless from the corded until we had battery technologies that were up to the job. And how might the needs in the market be changing? What are the unmet needs and how might they evolve? Has health and safety been the thing that has that's done it in for the corded drill and enabled the battery drill in order to come through? So you can start to play around with some ideas in terms of the sort of next generation device. Is that going to have an intelligent chuck? So we're not having to constantly keep changing the drill bits every time we want to change the drill size. Is it going to be something that doesn't use a cutter at all, but actually uses an energy beam? And would that be a laser? Would it be some thermal device? Would it be something else? So again, depending upon the sort of idea and solution you have, will take you down a particular path, which will lead you to, well, what is it that we're needing to demonstrate here? What is it that we need to try to work out how to do? And what are the technologies? Without losing sight of what the market needs are. So your earlier research all starts to kick in and helps to guide you down the particular path that you think is going to be the right one for you. Now, there's a number of tools and techniques. I'm not going to go into this one in particular detail, but it's worth you looking up. There's loads of stuff on the internet about it. It's called the Technology Readiness Levels, TRLs. It was developed by NASA for part of the space program in the 1970s. But fundamentally, what it does is it enables you to look at the technologies that you might need in terms of the ultimate technology to sell the product into the market, and see what sort of technologies might have been applied to this idea before. So it sort of starts with some very, very simple basic modeling, almost sort of cardboard models to check that it can be made, and then it sort of works its way up through lab standard tests, through to early field trials, through to sort of other environments that it might find similar to that in the marketplace, to the full environment that it would find. So it's a means by which you can sort of start at the point where others might have got to, and for you to see just how much more development might be needed to the technology to get the platform right for your idea to then be successful in the marketplace. So have a little look at those, because they can be really helpful in terms of providing you with that insight as to what to do. So in terms of the prototyping then, you've selected the particular invention that you're wanting to follow. What you now need to do is visualize that product and concept. And there's a whole series of sort of computer-aided design and modeling solutions that you can look at and explore. And if you go along to, say, somewhere like your business and IP centre at your local library, then they'll have tools and software that you can look at. But there's quite a lot of free stuff that you can download off the internet as well, where you can sort of develop some simple CAD models, and you can start to play around with them. So powerful means by which you can sort of get that early prototyping underway, looking at a particular level of technology that you might be wanting to use for moving forward. On the basis of trying to get the cost out of these things, out of this particular stage, what I tend to find is, and I'm based in the Humber region, so I'm quite close to the Hull library. And the Hull library have got not just a business and IP centre, a BIPC, but they've also invested massively in a large space for helping inventors and entrepreneurs build and test their prototypes. So this Makerspace is something that can radically transform and ease the way in which you can start to build prototypes and to test them. And some of the investment that they've put into tools and equipment and the support team is absolutely brilliant, at covering a whole range of different sectors. So if you've got a Makerspace near to you, I would strongly recommend that you go along and have a chat with them, because I think they will be able to help you significantly in terms of designing and building prototypes that you can then get tested. So you know, in terms of the textile industry, they've got a whole series of industrial sewing machines. In terms of sort of mock-ups that you might be wanting to make out of wood to start with, there's a range of different wood cutting saws, band saws. There's a whole range of stuff. From a sort of ceramics point of view, where you're dealing with stuff in clay, then there are a variety of different kilns. There's a whole load of other engineering tooling, and they've got a suite of 3D printers with a CAD software and people who can walk you through that enable you to get your CAD models produced and then items printed in plastic using the 3D printers. So really, really key, and I would strongly recommend that you tap into assets like this wherever you can. There may even be some funding available to support you, but have a chat with the advisors in your central library where they have a Makerspace or a BIPC, because this will help you to get the costs of this phase down considerably, and there'll be people there who can work with you and help you. And I do a lot of work in support of the whole library team in terms of providing that additional supplementary support to the excellent group of people that they've got there. So moving on quickly, how do you then go about providing the proof of how well an idea or a concept works? because this is absolutely key to underpinning the access to finance that you're going to need. Nobody's going to want to put money into something that they can't see is going to work. So you really need to be thinking about how you go about doing this and capturing the evidence as you do and writing it up in a way that will assist you with that investment side. So what you mustn't do is lose sight of the market, because the whole point of what we're trying to do is create a business with the potential to grow massively. Get that blue line on that chart that we saw earlier up as high as you possibly can, because that's how you get the money back out of it. And the money that you make out of that will then fund other innovation projects that you might want to run in the future. So what you need to be doing is thinking about putting yourself in the customer position. So constantly asking the question, how will the customers, that my target customers, evaluate and measure my product? Because I want to make sure that this product scores well on all of those counts. And then then you need to explore how you would quantify this. How would you measure it? What tests would you need to undertake in order to be able to do that? So with that market focus and that drive in terms of the testing, then what you would need to do is really design and develop your testing, designing your tests and then executing your tests around that particular sort of set of themes. You know, so if we're taking the drill, then something that is going to do the job. So what job would that be? Well, it might need to be lightweight, so we're not going to have our arms aching when it's really when we're holding it up for a long time. It might be that it needs to be really, really safe, so that even if we're using it out in the rain, we're not going to be electrocuted. It might need to pack a really powerful punch. There are lots of things that you might need to have in terms of its functionality. So you need to puzzle out what tests need to be undertaken and start to gather some information on those. The other thing is as well, you would need to consider what sort of industry you were in and all of the regulations and the legislation and the legal requirements. Not only that, but if you're going to sell it into certain regions of the world like Europe, you'd need the CE markings and all of the other certifications and qualifications that come with that. So what's that raft of testing that you'd need to be including, and how would you undertake all of that in addition to the sort of fundamental market requirements that you need to be undertaking? And where possible, try to get some independent validation and certification, so that it isn't just your test results that people are relying on. You know, if I was investing money on a project and I had seen that I'd not only got a set of test results, but there had been some independent validation of those by an organisation that I trusted, then that is going to give me an awful lot more confidence in wanting to invest in this project than I might have done otherwise. So again, who might those organisations be that you could approach? Now you can start to see why the costs are running up in the way that I was identifying before, because we are now having to commit to a whole range of different things, where we're using organisations that are going to be incurring fees. And why I suggested that you sort of use organisations like the British Library, or and in my case, the sort of local library with its business and IP centre and its Makerspace, because for a very small subscription, you're able to access some really high caliber support and equipment that you just wouldn't have been able to have got access to otherwise. So the final section then, how do I attract the investment that I need in order to be able to pay for all of the things that need to be done as part of this investment journey? And this is sort of like the $10 million question, because there is no right or wrong answer with it. In the early stages, you know, friends and family or reserves that you might have may go some way to supporting and assisting you in terms of those early research stages. But when you start to get into the development and the commercialization stages, then you're more likely going to find that neither they nor you have got enough money that could be invested into this particular project. And remember, there's always a lot of risk, and the newer and the more ambitious the invention, then potentially the more risk associated with it. So you're not wanting to put, you know, your friends and family in a situation where they're remortgaging their house and could lose it off the back of trying to find the money coming through. So you're likely to want to have to go along and speak to some financial organizations in order to be able to raise that money. And this is where all of the research and the testing and the information gathering and the independent validations all really start to kick in, because you've now got a story to tell. You've got a case to make. So building a strong business plan that really identifies what that blue line is going to look like is absolutely key. And make it as convincing as you possibly can, but underpin it with supporting evidence. And that might be that you've had a series of focus groups and got some feedback from it. It might be that there's some surveys that you've undertaken that give you an indication of the market. It could be that there's been some desk research or a variety of other market research techniques that you've deployed that give you a good spread of techniques and have therefore given a number of different views. There could be a whole series of statistical or data information from market research software. Again, some of it isn't accessible easily directly through the internet. So your BIPC Centre is going to be a place where you can, through their specialist market research software, get access to some of the information that will give you that underpinning evidence. Create a robust innovation plan. So the stages we've identified, look at what's involved in each of them, put some costs to them, show that you've got an understanding of what it is and how you're going to manage and contain the risks. Build a staged investment case. So look at the cash flow, look at when you might need to have certain monies, look at what information and evidence you might have at certain points in time that will then support you for getting the next dollop of money coming through. And gather that supporting evidence, because it's absolutely key to generating the confidence that you need. So go along, talk to your local library, talk to your business and IP centre, talk to your local growth hub or local enterprise partnership. Also see whether or not there are grant support agencies that might be able to match investment monies that you can find. Speak to your banks, but be prepared not to accept their particular commercial offers, but by turning them down as being unacceptable, then you may very well find that that opens you up to other investment funds like the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund. It's sort of a scheme that's been ratified through the British Business Bank. So, you know, the high streets are one port of call, but there are another range of business support banks that sit behind those that you may need to access. So explore those too. And then there's the sort of .gov, Innovate UK and other sort of national schemes that are around, which provide a package of support as well. So worth exploring. So I hope that has given you a little bit of an insight. We've sort of looked at that whole innovation journey and the stages involved with it. We've focused in on where it starts to get expensive in that whole investment cycle, which is around prototyping. We've touched on some ideas as to how you might be able to do that more cheaply, but as equally effectively. And we've also looked very closely at the sort of information that you might need to be gathering as you're going through this whole journey, because it's absolutely key to helping you in terms of raising the finance that you might need going forward. And we've touched on where you might be able to access some of that funding. So I hope that's been of use to you. Tried to pack as much information in as I could. And I think we're sort of open to questions. So as I've not been cut off yet, let's just have a little look and see if there are any questions that have come through. Nothing so far. So if anybody does have any questions, then please fire them through via the question link, and they should appear as a text on the phone, so I'll do my best to answer them. So just while I'm waiting for that, then just sort of take a moment out to sort of get you to maybe think quite carefully about the ideas that you've got, that you're considering setting a business up. You may already be part way through the journey, and in which case just ask yourself the question, have I covered each of these stages off well enough? Is there some market research or some scoping or some other things that I haven't done yet that actually I might be better off just stopping and going ahead and doing now, because A, I'm going to need them for gaining further access, but secondly, I'm going to also need them to understand whether or not I'm going to have the sort of business opportunity that this product, that I hope this product's going to have for me. So it's good to step back and just consider that whole journey before you come up with an idea, dive straight into prototyping, and not quite be sure what it is that you're trying to do. I find that you're incurring much more money and then sort of not knowing where to go and not having the evidence to support a strong case. So I've got a question come through. Thank you very much for that. So what if there are no other products like the one that I've got to launch? I'd say fantastic. You're very, very lucky if that's the case. You've clearly got something that's really very radical and revolutionary. Often you find that there are many ideas that are quite similar. So if you've got something that's really exceptional, that's great. If you've gone through the prototyping and the testing and you've got a technology available that enables it to work well, that is brilliant too. The key question then would be, is the market there? Or how do you access the market in order to be able to really get this thing launched? And that final commercialization stage is where you're really dealing with that. That's the bit that you're sort of saying, who are my target markets? How am I going to be able to reach them? What sort of promotional activities am I going to need? What is the price point that I need to have this, either as an introductory offer or in terms of moving forward? So all of that sort of market assessment is going to be really key. So if you've got something that's really revolutionary, that nobody else has got anything like it, and that it's something that people are prepared to pay good money for, then you're now really, that your mind should now really be focusing on that business marketing side of things, which is all about how am I going to sell it? How do I get into that market in such a way as I can promote it, make people aware of it, and have all the various channels and outlets for people to be able to easily buy it, whether that's online or through retail outlets. And have I got the manufacturing and supply chain capability built around my business, so if this thing really takes off, I've got suppliers who can keep pace with the demand that that customers are putting on me. So good luck with that. If it sounds like you're in a position there to really make a killing. So yeah, good luck with that. Just have a quick look at see if there are any others that have come through. Yep, there is. So thank you for that. So what is the process for designing a next generation product? Hey, that's another $10 million question. I like it. If we go back to the sort of drill, I mean, fundamentally, what we're looking at is getting a really clear understanding as to what the unmet need is. What is it that customers will be looking for in that next generation hand drill? So understanding that, and the better you can understand what the shortfalls are with the current device, then the easier it will be to see what sort of features and functions the new device has. So if you can get that next generation device specification sort of eked out and defined, then what you have is a situation where you can start to come up with a whole number of different design options and solutions. And you can match those to the different technologies that they might require to work. So those that require technologies which are still some way off wouldn't be ones that you choose if you're wanting to get to market now. So which is the best technology platform that's most mature, that suits a particular viable design, that you could then move on quickly, would be the sort of process that I would be looking at following in terms of coming up with a next generation, highly disruptive product, in that the market will massively move over to that next generation rather than staying with the ones that it's got. So the answer lies in the market research, and then in terms of matching your design solutions with the technologies that are available and finding the best combination and moving forward. That would be my advice to you. So my phone's just gone again. Let's just see. I've got a password on it, so it takes a while to open it up. So next question. Thank you very much for that. So at what point do I need to decide whether my product is ready for market? I mean, if you're just at the ideas stage, then the market research that you do in stages 2 and 3 should help you there. If you've actually come all the way through the stage 4 and into stage 5 with some of the commercialization, and you've got a product which you've tested, you've got some good results, you've got the confidence that it's going to work, the technology is mature enough in order for you to be able to do that. So you're sort of up at TRL levels, sort of 8 and 9, which is, it's proven in the field to be totally effective and meets all the requirements. Then I think the key decisions are going to be really around the marketplace, in terms of who your target customers are, and what you might need to do in terms of getting them to switch. So if you are at a point where we'd sort of we're just seeing, say, moving across from the corded drill to the battery drill, and you were coming up with something as well, but that battery drill was just really sort of taking off, you might find it will be very difficult for you to then start to sell in something that was even more advanced than that. So I think you do just need to look at the market. You do need to understand, you know, how strong the needs are, and make your decision around that if it's sort of almost ready to go. When you're in commercialisation, you're not so worried about the functionality working because you've already got that. You're really now looking at the market conditions and working out your market launch strategies and your growth strategies so that you can really exploit it to its full. Right, my phone's buzzing away. Let me just see if there are some other questions in. Crikey, they're coming in fast and furious. So thank you very much for that. Read the next one out. So how important is testing and researching when it comes to the potential branding of your products? I think it's quite important. I think it's very important, because if you're looking at trying to establish a brand with a good reputation that people can trust, then it needs to be underpinned with some effective testing, some independent validation and qualification, so that you know it does what it says it will do on the tin, and then when others come to use it, they've got the confidence and they can relate that confidence around the brand with the functionality and the depth of testing and certification that's gone around it. So if you're looking to put a premium priced product with a high quality, high reputation brand, it's absolutely essential. If you're looking at putting some sort of market basic in, a low price, low spec, so long as you're meeting all the regulations and the likes, maybe you're not too worried about that. So again, it's horses for courses. Right, let me just pick up the next question, if I can get my phone opened up again. How important is the lean business model in testing the market? I tend to be a great fan of lean, and wherever possible, I'm looking to try to take cost and time out of the process. So if we can streamline your process for that innovation journey, so you can get to market quickly, effectively, and at low cost, then you're going to be doing very well. So I really would support the lean manufacturing side as much as you possibly can. I've just been given notification that my time's almost up. I think that sort of captures the bulk of the questions. So thank you very much for your questions. I hope that you found today's session valuable, and please do check out those libraries. So that's me finished. Thank you very much.